Isso sempre acontece comigo. Se essa frase é familiar para você, escuta o que estou lendo no livro Casamento do Espírito. Isso se traduz como um sentimento de enquadramento e prisão na vida, e normalmente nem sabemos por que estamos vivendo desta maneira. Geralmente, a maior parte das pessoas culpa as circunstâncias exteriores de suas vidas, ao invés de olhar para o interior para ver o que precisa ser mudado. A partir dessas ideias, continuamos a conversar com Brad Laughlin e Leslie Temple Thurston, agora sobre a técnica de processamento chamada quadrados. Vamos saber mais.
The biggest challenge to changing the personality is the fact that the personality doesn't want to change. So you could also say that a definition of the personality is ego, and a definition of ego is control. And because the ego is all about control, it doesn't want to change. It wants to stay the same at all costs. And so that's the biggest challenge, is to overcome that place.
The reason we cannot connect with the oneness is the ego. And the ego must be looked at and worked with from somewhat of a psychological perspective. So we examine our personality. We do what my teacher used to call self-inquiry. We inquire about who we are in different ways, and we find that we're many things. The ego really is the shell of the personality that is created by the dualities, and it has become the container, almost the jail in which we are stuck. And it's not very difficult to get out of that stuck place.
Well, the square technique is the third technique that we teach. It goes the step beyond triangles, and it breaks a polarity out into more permutations of opposites. So it's probably, I would say, the squares technique is the most powerful thing that we teach, really, because it creates enormous shifts in the personality. One can create shifts in very difficult circumstances. Using a square really helps you to take a leap into a new paradigm of consciousness. And the square is all about attraction and repulsion, because in this world of duality, we're always attracting things to us and we're always repulsing things. And so for example, let's say the way we attract things to us is through our desires. When we desire something, we pull it to us. When we repulse something, you could also say that that's a fear. One way to describe a repulsion is that it's a fear. So we're pushing it away from us when we fear it.
Fear can make us realize that we need to change. Fear can set someone on the beginning of their journey into the oneness. Fear can be a motivator, in other words.
Let's take the example of pain and pleasure. What we do with the square is we break the polarity out into its desires and fears. So we have to look at how we desire pleasure, but also how we fear pleasure. There's a part of us that actually fears pleasure. It repulses pleasure. And that's, if it's a place that you really don't believe that you feel that way, we say that that's an unconscious corner of the square, and you really need to look at that piece, because the unconscious is the trick of the ego. The unconscious place is the part that keeps the ego going. As long as there's an unconscious piece to the ego can stay playing its games, keeping you locked into dramas. And the purpose of the square is to make the unconscious unconscious. So by looking at the ways that we desire pleasure and the ways that we repulse pleasure or fear pleasure, we're making the unconscious places conscious for us. And then we do the same with the opposite. So we do that with pain as well. We look at the way that we repulse pain, we fear pain, but then we also have to look at how we attract pain to us. There's a part of us that literally desires pain. And this may be the most difficult thing for people to look at, because everybody says, I don't do that. I don't desire pain. Nobody desires pain. But the truth is, there's a part of the ego that does, and it's unconscious. And so by looking at what I would call the victim persona, that's the one that desires pain. And it might be a part of us that, it's not something we like to look at, but it's a place where, well, maybe we get a lot of attention from being a victim. And so we might attract pain into our life just so that we can get sympathy and love and attention from people for being a victim. So it's tricky. You have to look at things in that way.
We recommend clearing away the ego because those structures of the personality block the light of the oneness. But there are other techniques. I strongly recommend meditation, because without even having to work on your ego, if you learn how to meditate very well, you have an immediate and direct connection to the oneness. For the duration of the meditation, perhaps it doesn't stay with you throughout the day, but there are benefits that do stay with you.
I started doing this work because I think my whole life I had been searching for something and I didn't really know what it was. I looked for fulfillment in many places, happiness in many places, and I looked through jobs, through relationships, through money, through travel, all kinds of ways and places. And I never really found the fulfillment that I was really looking for. Nothing seemed to touch that deep place inside of me. And it was at that point that I started a spiritual path, and I started really consciously looking for a deeper meaning in life. You could call it the path of self-discovery. It's been a profound journey of self-discovery for me, doing this work of unraveling the personality and looking for higher consciousness. Using these techniques, the polarities, triangles, and squares specifically.